Live from a bunker in the heart of the Ozarks, a podcast that will get you some lemonade if you like. It's Sif Pop. Welcome to Sif Pop Weekly. Streaming live most weekends or available to download later in your podcast feed, unless, of course, you're a patron.
Patrons get perks.
Patrons get those perks.
Woo!
I'm your host, Aaron Dicer, and he smells like a podcast, but we still love him. It's Andrew Ormsby, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't get that reference, but ahoy!
Each week we'll chat about movies, television, and whatever else from the pop culture universe is on our minds. And please welcome back our guest this week. He's wearing little cowboy boots to be just like Alan Kim. It's TT, ladies and gentlemen. So adorable. Those little boots are so adorable, TT. Pretty incredible. TT is a film critic for Fox 19 in Cincinnati, Ohio, also a fellow member of the CCA, the Critics' Choice Association. And yeah, we talked a little bit about the Critics' Choice nominations in our pre-show. So if you are a Sif Pop member, you should be able to check that out shortly at your Sif Pop membership page. Welcome back, TT. How are you doing, man? How are things going for you?
You know what? I'm feeling good. I think I've already told you I've had my second dose of the vaccine. Life is good. I'm not feeling any ill effects at the moment. Although, like I said, hey, if I end up crashing, I'm right here by my bed. If I dip out of screen, that's what it is. Doesn't mean I don't love everybody. It just means that it's hitting me. But it hasn't hit me yet.
Kicking in. Yeah.
It hasn't hit me yet.
No, that's good. That's a man with a plan right there. He knows what's going on. I now want nothing more than some sort of bed or cot in my office that I can just collapse onto from my desk. I think that sounds absolutely wonderful. So, Andrew, how close are you to relaxation?
My dog's doggy bed is like right next to my computer, so which is about 2 foot by 2 foot, so it could get maybe my shoulder.
Yeah, sure. You'll have a very comfortable shoulder, I'm sure.
Yeah.
We are excited to bring you a couple reviews this week, as we always do. Hello to the live viewers. We appreciate you hanging out with us. Hello to the podcast listeners. We appreciate you subscribing and downloading. It's really kind of a fun group that hangs out with us in both places, and we're glad to have you along. So thank you for that. We're going to talk a little bit about Judas and the Black Messiah and Minari this week for our reviews. We are going to also do a best ever challenge, one of our trademarked crazy best ever challenges, where we are finding the best ever movies that have the words "and the" in the title.
Shockingly, really high caliber list.
Yeah, there's a lot of good "and the" movies.
So
we will get to those. Of course, we'll also have some buried treasure at the end. But yes, TT, glad to have you back. Andrew, good to have you along. Producer Phil, thanks for producing the show. I'm just feeling wonderful today as we head into this, but let's get into it and talk a little bit about our first movie, Judas and the Black Messiah. Offered a plea deal by the FBI, William O'Neill infiltrates the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party to gather intelligence on Chairman Fred Hampton. Judas and the Black Messiah stars Daniel Kaluuya as Fred Hampton and Lakeith Stanfield as William O'Neill. This comes to us from director Shaka King, bringing this one to us, and finds itself in the midst of a very strange award season where it can be released in February and still be a part of the consideration. So, that's what brings us to here. This is kind of I guess it is a biopic, right? It's a Fred Hampton biopic in many ways, even though it doesn't really feel like one. Maybe we can get a little bit more into that, but let's start here. Andrew, did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay?
I really liked it, close to loving it, but I'm actually wondering if it's more of a William O'Neill biopic as opposed to a Fred Hampton biopic.
It's interesting, yeah.
But really liked it / really close to loved it.
Okay. TT, like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay?
You know what? I'm in the same boat, and I completely agree with the idea that it really does feel more like the O'Neill story than Fred Hampton's story. So yeah, I think that's a spot on kind of assessment for this. And it is dangerously close for me to trip over into the loving it stage, but I would still say it's a really, really strong, liked it a lot.
Guys, I unabashedly loved this movie. I
get it.
I was so drawn in from start to finish of what's going on here, what Shaka King's doing here. I found it, and I guess I'll start here since it appears maybe I even love it more than you guys did. I just feel like even though it is based on a true story, digging into just a shameful part of our history, in going into those things that are important to dig, it also provides in many ways an interesting action movie, an interesting drama. Like this is a movie. And when I say action, I don't mean like big explosions necessarily. I mean like a crime style action movie. Like this is just a great movie. In addition to being such an important movie, and I think that's why at the end, that and of course the just absolutely bravura performances at the center of it kind of put me firmly in that loved it camp. What of that stuff, TT, we'll start with you. What of that stuff do you agree with? Like, how did this movie hit you as you were kind of going through it?
It really hit me, and from the standpoint that this was one of several films that we've gotten, say, in the last few months that have really looked at and explored the idea of the FBI, and their kind of probing into the lives and situations of people of color in this country. I mean, we've got the United States versus Billie Holiday, which will be coming up soon. You've got MLK, FBI, and even to a certain extent, from myself, I would even throw Small Axe in there too, because even though that's not set here in the U.S., it still gives us an opportunity in this case to not worry about the FBI, but to look at the Black Panther Party and what they were able to do in other parts of the world, where again the point for them was still trying to find ways to bring communities of people together. And obviously here, the FBI had problems with that. So I see all of that and I take it all in, and it's an opportunity for us to learn more about this history of our country and hopefully kind of use that learning as an opportunity to move the country forward, because we obviously are all dealing with several other issues in terms of the government structure right now and things that are going on. But I think the thing that hurts me the most in terms of really buying into this, and let me just say, I love the performances from Stanfield and Kaluuya. I think the two of them are just incredible. They're exciting to watch. But I think what happens in seeing them is you almost forget the idea that Fred Hampton was 21 years old when he died. 21. Yeah. O'Neill was not much. I mean, O'Neill was, I think, 20 at the time that all that happened. So to my mind, there's almost this sense that you kind of miss sort of the power and the influence that these two guys had, especially, Kaluuya's Hampton, because we're looking at Kaluuya in that role and we're seeing this very fully formed, mature adult, kind of a seasoned adult in that role, when in truth, I mean, Hampton was pretty seasoned for what he had experienced in his lifetime, but he was a really young man. So that for me was a little bit not troubling, but it kind of it took me out of things just a little bit. I almost wish we could have had a 21-year-old Daniel Kaluuya doing this, and then I would have been all in.
I'm so glad you brought that up, and it's interesting that you do, because I had almost put that in the category of points for the movie when I realized how young they were. But you're right, the performances don't lend themselves to the awareness of how these are just kids. And I looked it up, and he was 1 year younger than Fred Hampton, so they were right there at the around the same age. And the idea that he is killed at 21 years old. Like, I mean, that is sophomore year of college for people who go straight to college after high school. Like, that's, I don't know. It's one of those things where you're right. You are absolutely right. The movie itself doesn't present that in an impactful or meaningful way. What was interesting for me is as I learned that and as I understood that, it made the story so much more powerful and meaningful that I almost gave points to the movie for that, which is an interesting kind of psychological process. But I think you're totally right there. Andrew, what about you? What are some of your thoughts?
I totally agree with TT on the fact that they, both Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield, are the standout performances. They're the main characters, but they're incredible for different reasons, because I feel like Daniel Kaluuya was a transformative performance. Like when I was watching this, it didn't feel like I was watching Kaluuya, you know. It's like he became Hampton, you know, and it was like I'm seeing this different person living his life. Like I'm not watching a performance. Lakeith Stanfield is what I think is probably, for me personally, what I consider the best performance in the movie, because I think that it lends itself to the most emotional range, I guess, seeing this character go through fear, regrets, turmoil, and then also exuberance. You know, there's moments where he's just, you know, talking to all these people that he is, I guess you could. It was weird because I don't know if infiltrated, because yes, he did, but I also feel like he became a part of that movement at the same time. So infiltrating or just, you know, being a friend to all these people, it's a very difficult performance, I would imagine. And yeah, I bought into him 100%. Unfortunately, though, and I never thought I would say this in my life, my biggest complaint with the movie is I don't think Jesse Plemons gives a good performance in this movie. I'm sorry. I never thought I'd say that in my life, but Jesse
Plemons? How dare you?
St. Plemons, I know. I didn't understand what his character wanted, because there's parts of it where I'm like, oh, okay, so he's going to turn around on this whole thing. He's questioning the system and everything like that. And then the very next scene, you'll see him just all gung-ho with Hoover, you know? And I'm like, wait, well, what about that scene before where you were like, oh, maybe we're not the good guys, you know? So I don't know if that's writing or if it's just not a well thought out character. But,
I think the intent with the Plemons performance, and I do appreciate, I think it's a very important character to put in a movie like this.
Oh, don't get me wrong, that's important. Yeah.
Is the idea of white passivity, right? The idea of, well, if I'm not the one who's calling the shots, I'm just in a system, I'm just playing my part, I'm just, you know, like there's the idea of, because sometimes what you can get in a movie like this is just a lot of extremes, right? Just a lot of, because obviously J. Edgar Hoover is the villain of this movie, and the movie is not shy about making him the villain. Martin Sheen, I think, right? Absolutely unrecognizable.
Good makeup Hoover on that part.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
So I think it is supposed to, and I could be wrong. I could be totally, putting this on the movie, but I think it is supposed to go, look, you don't have to be pulling the actual trigger to be part of the problem, to be part of the issue. And I think that is an important character to have there, an important part of the story to say. Otherwise, it can be very easy to distance yourself from the issue, from the problem, from your own bias, from your own culpability. And so I think that's what that character is there to try to do.
Yeah, well, it's the Milgram experiment, right? You know, where they had the people behind the glass, and if they got an answer wrong, they would get shocked, or they thought that they would get shocked, you know, and it was supposed to correlate to, in World War II, how Nazi soldiers felt like, well, I'm just following orders, you know, so I'm not the bad guy. I'm the one that's just following the orders. So it's passing the buck of blame sort of thing. So, yeah. I get that.
Yeah, and I don't think he was spectacular, but I didn't see it as a necessarily a problem of the movie in that way. TT, other thoughts?
Well, again, I still, like I said, I stand by the idea that with a lot of these biopics, when they come out, especially when they're these big kind of pivotal historic moments, there tends to be more questioning of those stories when they're from people of color. Ava DuVernay got tons of, pushback against Selma because of, how are you portraying, the president in this particular situation, or, the white characters in other situations. How do these things play out? And again, are you trying to villainize them even more? And it's interesting that, again, like I said, one of the things with this film, it is less about whether elements were downplayed or upplayed or anything like that. It's just more the idea that, again, the film sets up, and it feels almost to an extent like if we didn't know this was true, this would be sort of a crazy story that you can imagine someone making up.
Right.
Like the idea, I'm going to find a black guy who has committed some crimes, and then I'm going to insert him into this world. And I mean, basically, if we look at it, this is, and I feel like I'm really feeling kind of weird that I'm even going to bring this up, but it's kind of like the Fast and the Furious in a way. Okay. That's what it feels like. We're inserting some guy into this world, but it's a story kind of thing that you could buy. That's what would happen. But again, the fact that this is real should force us to really watch it and look at it, and then really go back and explore and learn the history. And really, like I said, the thing that's fascinating is you find out, again, like I said, with the Billie Holiday film, the same kind of dynamic takes place.
Right.
They were able to find black people who they could say, okay, we want to insert you into this world. We're trying to, dig up dirt, find out whatever we can. We're going to put you in here. And again, that central dilemma is a really fascinating and complex dilemma, because if you're that black character who has then been forced into this situation, how do you deal with it? Again, we've already talked about the idea that O'Neill has that tricky kind of role where he's there and he's friends with people, and he starts to feel and believe what he's hearing. Again, you can't not feel and believe hearing Fred Hampton or Daniel Kaluuya kind of inspiring you with his words about the power of being a revolutionary, and not think that, I should be a part of this. This movement matters, and yet I'm still, I got to cover my own skin a little bit, so I've got to rat out people. And again, that's a fascinating dynamic that, again, like I said, we're used to seeing in films all the time. But now this is not just a film. This is a true story. So then it should force us to really think about and evaluate, again, how these tropes and how powerful they really can be when, again, you're placing them in a real life context.
Yeah. I think one of the most powerful parts of Stanfield's performance is how internal it is. And I was really impressed with his ability to communicate that turmoil when he had to keep it interior, right? Because he's undercover. So that turmoil can't be exterior, yet he managed to, through the performance, through the writing as well, communicate that to us. And I was so blown away by these two performances. They just floored me. So what were you going to say, Andrew?
I think TT brought up something that actually lends itself to a more crazy notion that this is a true story, because you brought up the Fast and the Furious. But if you think about that, like Brian O'Connor, or if you look at Point Break with Johnny Utah, those guys were cops who went undercover. This is somebody who had no training, no knowledge of what he was really getting into. It lends itself to the craziness that this actually happened, and that this is the way they went about it. It feels almost like, you're taking advantage of him, but it seems almost more depravity. Like there's a higher level of depravity to it, because you're not like, it's not like Jesse Plemons really had any love or connection to O'Neill. Whenever, if he's not like, I'm sending my partner in there, you better keep him safe. There's none of that going on. Like, if something happens to O'Neill while he's in there, Plemons doesn't care. He is and it feels much more dangerous, yes, for O'Neill, but at the same time, there's no cavalry coming to save him. So there's a higher level of intensity that, like TT said, if this was a crazy action movie, you wouldn't believe it if you didn't know it was true.
Yeah. I really respect a lot of what goes on in this movie and what they did here. I think it's incredible work, and it's definitely one that I think needs to be seen. And that amongst all the other things that we say, I think this is This is really important. It's like you look at Trial of the Chicago 7, right? This whole movie takes place in the middle of Trial of Chicago 7.
Yeah.
And it's like Trial of the Chicago 7 just kind of waves at it. She's like, hey, guys. And just kind of goes on by, right? And then you watch this movie and you're like, wait, how did you just wave at that? Like, so,
yeah.
You know, it's one of those movies that further informs such an important part of history. And yeah, so if nothing else, here the recommend to check it out, understand the story, and to wrestle with it. So yeah,
definitely
powerful movie that I think this movie is going to stick with me for a while. Like it's hard to put into words sometimes, like when you see something and you're like, how could I have been, you know, either blind or ignorant or just unappreciative of the struggles of others. And then this year in particular, and I guess I'll get 2020 and this year have really, you know, done a great job with bringing films that really shine a light on a history that I guess Aaron and I, I'm not speaking for Aaron, but we either didn't know or obviously we didn't appreciate to a certain extent because we didn't live it.
Sure.
Or haven't lived with it. So yeah,
right. Definitely. TT will give you the final thoughts as far as like you recommend it for people, you know, what would you say to people thinking about seeing this?
Yeah, you know what? I can't recommend it highly enough. And again, I think, you know, I want to piggyback off that last comment because really what this story is about, and one of the things that's so fascinating about it, again, we're watching it in February during Black History Month, but I have been very vocal over the last few weeks during our coverage here, where I'm talking about the idea that I'm kind of pushing back against that whole idea of Black History Month, because really at the end of the day, you know, Judas and the Black Messiah is an American story.
Right.
And we should be talking about it as an American story. And again, part of the discussion about it has to revolve around the idea that, yes, in most cases, people may not have known about Hampton and O'Neill and what was going on and how the FBI was doing all this stuff. But we can't just look at this and say, well, yeah, because it was about this Black figure in Chicago. And, you know, that's it. It has a niche kind of approach to it. It's like, no, this is American history. This is about our country.
Right.
So we need these stories to have a better understanding of who we are as a country, how we've handled situations in the past. And then ideally, it informs what we're saying that we're trying to do in today's world.
Yep.
So that's the only thing for me that really matters at the end of the day about this film is we just need to stop thinking about it as if it's a segmented or a segregated part of our history. This is us. That's at the end of the day, that's really what we need to be thinking about.
Very well said. Appreciate that, TT. We will leave it there and move on to our second movie for the week. Let's talk a little bit about Minari. A Korean-American family moves to an Arkansas farm in search of its own American dream. Amidst the challenges of this new life in the strange and rugged Ozarks, hey, I know those, they discover the undeniable resilience of family and what really makes a home. Stephen Yoon is Jacob, Han Yu-ri, Yoon Young-jung. We mentioned little Alan S. Kim in here as well, doing some fun work. It's interesting, TT, that we come out of Judas and the Black Messiah with you talking about an American story. And we come to another movie that is having that exact same discussion right now because it's falling into nominations as a foreign language film. But there has rarely been such an American movie. This is exactly what you're talking about in a different context. But because it's a Korean family and because they speak Korean, all of a sudden it is this segmented thing, or now it's a foreign language film, or whatever the case may be. So I find it very interesting that that's kind of the transition as we kind of head in to Minari. Now, I will say, and I should have said this with Judas and the Black Messiah, that is currently available to stream on HBO as well as in theaters, if you want to check that out. Minari is in theaters and also was available, I should say, to screen at the A24 screening room. All of those screenings, it appears to me on the website, are sold out. They did a thing where they had 6 p.m. screenings available up until the 25th, but all those tickets have been sold. Wanted to let you know that as well. And also because of that, Andrew has not had a chance to see this. So I wanted to let people know that ahead of time as well. So Andrew, that does not mean you are eliminated from the conversation. Feel free to ask questions. He has now left the camera. He does not want to take part. So feel free to ask questions, interject, all those kind of things. But I wanted to let people know that TT and I are the ones who have seen Minari. So I guess I will start there, TT, with you. What did you think? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay?
You know what? I like this a lot. And again, you're completely right. This is, again, for my money, this is one of the most American films I've seen in the last year.
Right? Yeah.
It does. It captures another aspect of the American experience. It captures it beautifully too. And again, it's such a really pointed and intimate kind of story that, you know, it pulls you right in. It's about the immigrant experience. And I think it does this really great thing of being able to give us 3 very different takes or perspectives on that immigrant experience. You got the grandmother who, you know, has just come over, doesn't speak English, really is sort of the root of the old country. You have the parents, her children, who, you know, have come here and understand and appreciate the idea of what the American dream is about, and they want to do the best they can to achieve it. And again, the heart of the drama is watching Jacob, the father, struggle with trying to achieve that American dream and what happens to him along the way. But then it also gives you the chance to look at the children too. And the children are, you know, are here. They're American citizens in a completely different way. Their connection to the old country is only through the grandmother, but you see and feel all of that in this story. And you see all of them interacting with, you know, the other citizens in their community and how it all plays out. It's again, it's another one of those for me that I would say it's a really, 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 really close to loving it, but I'm just not quite there yet. But again, the jump is so small that I mean, it's negligible at best, because again, it's a great, powerful film.
Yeah, I find myself right on the precipice of loved it as well, and probably falling over into that precipice. So you could say low side of loved it. I really think this is a great movie, a spectacular film. I was impressed with a lot of, you know, what's going on here, but I think what you said specifically about the generational thing is the magic of this movie, and the way, because amongst many of the Asian American reviews that I've read of this movie, there is an identification they make with one of those 3 generations that you mentioned. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I might be wrong about this, but I believe the children of immigrants consider themselves what's called like Generation 1 American, like Generation 1 immigrants, that kind of idea. So what you're dealing with in this movie is Generation -1, Generation 0, and Generation 1, right? Like we are really looking at the idea of what immigration looks like at its fullest. And you are so correct. It is such an American tale. The idea of the promise of that is given of coming to this country, you know, making your own thing, making it work. That is what this movie is about. And it deals in such beautiful nuance with what is real about that and what isn't real about that, and where, you know, where that succeeds and where that fails. And I was really captured. And the reason I end up in the loved it category, I was really captured by just being able to experience that through this family and kind of what they're going through. What are some of your general thoughts, TT?
You know what? I'm gonna go back and just to say that, you know what, I'm gonna agree with you. I'm gonna say I'm falling into the love it category. The more we talk about it, I was kind of already there anyway, and I'm feeling like, why am I trying to hold myself up? Like,
no. Commit, TT, commit.
I'm going to. This is it. I'm going to dive into the love it. This was one of those films that was always feeling like a top 10 film of the year for me, because of everything that we've talked about. And I feel like it definitely hit there, and it hit me in all the right places. But I think the thing that is fascinating to me again, we spend so much time as critics in today's world talking about representation and what it means and how we see and experience other people's stories and find ways to incorporate them into our own experiences. I'm a Black person here in the United States who can trace his family's connection here to my grandmother's grandfather, who was the first freedman in our family, which means that there were generations before Solomon where we were still here and we weren't considered citizens or anything else. So in my mind, I in some ways I'm kind of like, yeah, I have one of those quintessential American kinds of experiences, but I love being able to see a film like this and explore someone else's impression of what the American experience and the American dream is like too, because it kind of helps you to recognize that, wait a minute, there isn't just one monolithic way of looking at what it means to be American.
Right.
And the more that we open ourselves up and the more that we have the opportunity to spend time and hear about other people's stories and experiences, the more it kind of fills out that idea of what our experience is and who we are as a people. So yeah, this is again, for me, one of those stories that I watched it and it lured me in with that. But again, I was also just as excited, and I'm glad, especially during award season now, we're seeing some love for the performances along the way.
Yeah.
Because, the film and the story is great, but again, it's not going to have the same power if we don't buy those characters. And Jacob, and for me, in a lot of ways, he's not getting the same kind of love that like the grandmother gets or the kids get, but there's something so really gritty and intense and primal about the idea of a guy who's like, yeah, this is my dream. This is why I brought my family here. We're trying to save each other. We're trying to set up a future for ourselves. And by golly, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And there's this stubborn determination to it that he gives us. Stephen Yeun gives us all of that in the best ways possible. He doesn't have to scream it and shout it and jump. I mean, again, you feel it in his bones in this performance.
Yeah.
So that for me is one of the takeaways where I'm like, yeah, that's great work, and I'm glad we're recognizing it, because again, this is the kind of film, A24, smaller independent title, in another year, this is again not necessarily getting as much love from the Critics' Choice or potentially from the Oscars, but yeah, there's an opportunity here, and I hope we don't let that slip through our fingertips, because this is something we need to recognize and we need to pay attention to it, because if we do it now, then we open that door and we keep it open for more of these different kinds of stories to come through, and for us to have these greater experiences of what the entire American experiment is all about.
Yep. Agree with you about the performances. I think they're great. Another thing this movie does very well is it moves you through the story of this family and hits kind of the major turning points in this family, the major events, things that happen. And it understands how to construct that story in a way that momentum never feels lost. You always feel like you're understanding what is going on with this family, where they are in their journey, and what this might mean to them. And because of that, the emotion you feel with them, that empathy is such a huge part of this movie succeeding at what it wants to do. That when they're in a good time, you're in a good time, and when some tragedy hits, you're feeling tragedy. This movie does such a great job at putting you in a family and putting me in a family that this isn't what I see in the mirror, right? Like this isn't something I recognize. I don't understand the Korean culture necessarily that somebody else might identify with, but I do understand the humanity. And this movie does such a great job at helping, at really portraying humanity, that at the end of the day, as you go, well, you can talk about what it means to be quote unquote American, but this movie is really concerned about what it means to be human. And part of what the movie is doing is saying that when we excise what American or America means to us from what being human means, that's where we've made the mistake. And so the movie gives us several examples, I think, with this family interacting with people who don't see them as what it means to be American, and discludes them from that. So yeah, I was really impressed with the structure and the storytelling in this. I found it very compelling overall. Andrew, you have any questions, any thoughts, anything, as you've kind of looked at this movie from afar and haven't seen it, what have been some of your thoughts?
It is on my radar, and I really do want to see it. And I'm glad to hear that you both love it, especially you now, TT, that you committed to it. Yeah. It's kind of the story that I expected to hear. I guess I could say that it's the again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like it's the American dream is earned, not given. That this coming to this new place and trying to find a piece of it to make your own can be difficult. And it's a story that I'm interested and fascinated to see put out, and to hear that, Young and the rest of this cast are giving it their own, giving it the performance that it deserves is exciting for me to go and watch it whenever A24 decides to stop giving a number on the tickets they sell for a digital release. So thanks for that.
Yeah. We haven't mentioned Will Patton as well. I always like seeing Will Patton pop up and stuff, and his role here is interesting. I think he does a really great job with it, and I think it plays again a crucial role of someone trying to understand and someone who is dealing with their own labels and those kind of things. So yeah, I think that the movie is well textured in that way, and that it approaches the themes and the topics from several different angles while we still focus on this family. So
I had to look up because I forgot who Will Patton was, but yes, now I'm even more excited because I love Will Patton. So
yeah. Any other thoughts, TT, on this one?
I think we've covered it all, and you're right. I'm glad you did mention Patton, because that's one of those great relationships in there where there could potentially be that clash of cultures, or where there's this uncomfortable kind of look at how the two are interacting, and in some cases could be seen in a very negative way. But again, it's an opportunity to see how you move past that. How, again, you start to learn about each other and have the opportunity to say, okay, well, yeah, you're like me. Again, that shared humanity is the piece that, okay, yeah, right. We both want the same things. And it's just like, yeah, I recognize that's what you want, because yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to. And again, that's, like I said, we need more of that. So I'm like, yeah, this film opens that door. It's going to keep it open. So I'm like, yeah, we need more of that, especially today.
Totally agree. It is one of those weeks where this is a very easy 1-2 recommend both kind of week. If these weren't already on your radar to see, both of them should be, I believe. I believe you'll take something from them either way. So yeah, this is another big recommend for me as well. So Andrew, I'm excited for you to eventually see it, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts once you do it. So we'll get there eventually. Eventually, A24 will figure out this crazy thing called the internet and how to do more than just a few virtual tickets. Sold out. No more seats. No more internet seats, Andrew. No more internet seats.
I'm sure there's a way I could have watched it, but I guess I just didn't look hard enough.
Really, at the end of the day, it's all your fault. Let's move on.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Let's move on to the best ever challenge. Before we do, though, just a shout out and thank you to our SIF Pop members. Thank you for making this podcast and the website, sifpop.com, possible. We really do appreciate you. If you're curious what that's all about, you can check it out at the Patreon, patreon.com/siftpop. We do a weekly bonus podcast where we talk about a separate topic. In this case, we talked about the Critics' Choice Award nominations and some thoughts about those from TT, who is a fellow member of the Critics' Choice. So you can check that out again at patreon.com/siftpop. And thank you so much to those who already support. All right, let's do the best ever challenge. We're doing best ever and the movies. These are movies that have and the in the title in honor of Judas and the Black Messiah. So yeah, we already mentioned The Fast and the Furious. So I'm sure that was already on all of our lists. But
honorable mention.
Sure, yeah.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
Let's go number 5 to number 1. We'll go around in a circle, and I'll start us off with my number 5. I had Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which is my favorite Harry Potter movie, and I think is good stuff. So that's what I had in at my number 5. All the Harry Potter movies fit into this category, right? Don't they all? Aren't they all and the movies? Every last one of them? Am I wrong about that? And the Deathly Hallows? Yeah, I think they all.
Yeah, I think they all.
Don't ask me. I don't like Harry Potter, so.
Oh well, fair enough.
I have no idea.
Andrew,
yes, Aaron. They all are and the movies. So
thank you. I appreciate the yes anding. What's your number 5, Andrew?
Actually, my number 6 and number 5 are kind of interchangeable because I forgot my number 6 existed while I was making before I sent the list to Phil. But I'm gonna go. My number 5 is Jason and the Argonauts. It's an old 1963 movie, and oh my goodness, this movie is amazing. The score, the sound, like the score for this movie is brilliant. It's like epic and grandiose, and the acting is surprisingly, it's not like cheesy campiness for like an old like mythology movie. But I think the thing that really sets us apart is the brilliant use of practical / special effects for a movie this old, that to this day, seeing Talos turn his head, and you see this giant sculpture, you're like, oh wow, they did some great stuff with some brilliant and stuff I never would have thought of for as far as like special effects in the 60s would go. So I love this movie, I really do. It's a great epic mythological tale that a lot of people need to see. Nice.
TT, what do you got at number 5?
You know what? That's a great one. I'm so glad that triggered in my head. I need to go back and see that again. So
it's good.
That was great. That was great. I went kind of cheesy and campy with my number 5. I went with Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow. You talked about the technology and how they rendered all those effects in Jason and the Argonauts. I mean, I feel like in some ways this was, sort of a newer, let's have some fun with green screen. What can we do? How can we put all this stuff together and not use very much in terms of practical effects? And it didn't necessarily do all that well at the box office, but I actually remember the press screening for this, going to see it, and kind of being on a little bit of a high. Like, I was like, wow, I wonder what they're going to do with this and how is it going to look? And I'm usually not all that interested in any of the technical stuff behind behind the films that we watch. I kind of go in and I'm like, you know what? It's better for all of that stuff to kind of bleed away, and I just settle into the world and get in with the characters and all that. But I found myself really enjoying watching this just to see how they figured it all out and how they put it together. And it was almost like a puzzle in a way, kind of looking at all that technical stuff, which, to be quite honest, reminded me that I probably didn't need to pay that much attention to the story because it really wasn't that much there in the first place.
No, not
really. Oh yeah, it was fine kind of skipping the story in that case. But yeah, I had a great time. And again, this whole challenge kind of reminded me of the idea that in my mind, the whole idea of the films, there was some kind of fun, cheesy campiness to the idea. So it was like, this fit in its own way.
Well, I like the 1950s Elseworld kind of movies, that kind of, I guess, what would you call it? Like a made up history, like if this would have happened. Yeah, the what if. It's a fun movie, it's one of those kind of like, I don't know why, but I rewatched or listened to our podcast about Terminator Dark Fate. It's one of those movies like, I liked it, just don't think about it. It's a good movie if you just don't think about it.
Yeah.
You're right. There is something about this whole category, that has a feel to it that is like based on old comics almost. There's very much that, your hero and the, whatever his challenge is, this time. That's interesting. All right, on to our number 4s. My number 4 is Kubo and the Two Strings. Man, do I love this movie. This movie is gorgeous, beautiful, extremely thematic, powerful, and I love the way the story turns at the end. I think is really interesting as well. So this has been one of my favorites since it came out, and I wanted to mention it again. I will also say all 5 in my top 5 are in my top 200 movies of all time. So they are all movies that I really, really do love, and Kubo is definitely one of those. So If you haven't had a chance to see Kubo and the Two Strings, I would highly recommend it. That is my number 4.
Yeah.
What do you got, Andrew?
I'm just going to echo that because I think when we first watched it, I said, yeah, I liked it. But after revisiting it a couple times, I've really appreciated that movie a lot more. I think Kubo is great. My top 4 are actually also in my top 100 movies of all time. So my number 4 is Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. You know me, I love Westerns, and this is one of the best. The chemistry between Paul and Redford is just great. It's just it's so comedic, and so it feels so natural the way that they're talking to each other. Paul Newman is this charismatic, can't get me down, always got that smile on his face kind of guy. Well, you have Redford as this quiet, steely-eyed, mysterious, just nobody knows really much about him, but it's like, I don't know why those two characters work so well together, but they do. And the effects in this movie also, there's an effect in this movie I didn't know how they did, where there's a train car that explodes right in front of them. And I'm like, I have no idea how they did that. I mean, that sounds like an incredibly dangerous stunt to do. So I looked up online how they did it. They blew up a train car right in front of 2 stunt doubles. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they did that. And I guess it's one of the most dangerous stunts ever done for a movie, like ever. Yeah. That they literally blew up.
It. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I don't know how many times I've seen this movie or seen that scene, but I'm like, yeah, those aren't like dummies that they just put in front of a train car. Those are like people moving around. And I'm like, how did they do that? And I looked it up. They did it. And it's funny because they show behind the cameras, like they have a bunker built in front of all the cameras. And then in front of the bunker are the 2 stuntmen. So I'm like, oh my gosh, these people are insane. I hope they got paid well to have a train car blow up in front of them with real dynamite.
You watch some of those old movies, and
it's crazy.
It's crazy what the stunt people survive. Back then. So what's your number 4, TT?
All right, I'm gonna stick with the whole cheese ball aspect that I've had going so far, and for me, it's Smokey and the Bandit.
I have my honorable mentions for sure. Yeah.
You got, this just the idea of, again, from with Cannonball Run and the Dukes of Hazzard, and there's a whole world of these kinds of films that I just, there's a part of me as a kid growing up, you saw them on TV back in the day on network TV. There was the fun of watching them. And I've already mentioned like the whole Fast and Furious thing, which in some ways is like, the latter day version of these kinds of stories. So, the outlaws, racing cars and trucks and doing whatever they need to do, playing people for fools along the way. But there's always this kind of weird joking camaraderie between the 2 opposing sides. Like at some point I kind of have to say I love the idea of all of those. So this is again, this kind of fits in for me. Like I said, it was the whole cheesiness of it that I was kind of like, that's part of the fun too. Like this is a great day to think about cheese. So I'm doing the best I can to keep the cheese going.
Well, I think that Burt Reynolds in Smokey and the Bandit is very much, if I want to do a comparison, the Paul Newman of Butch Cassidy. He's got that smile, that a suave debonair. Like, even though it's like a redneck, it's a redneck version of that, but he's like, he's charming, you love the guy. I'm with you. I love Smokey and the Bandit. I think it's a super fun movie.
Yeah. Good call. All right, on to our number 3s. Always impressed by our live chat. They know us very well. They just called my number 3. Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Same.
Is my number. That's your number 3 as well. All right.
Yeah.
There you go. I don't know. This is one of those movies where you could certainly make an argument that this is not a good movie, like not a well-made movie. Like, it is a movie that ran out of money. They had to completely, figure out some sort of weird ending that, has no connection to anything whatsoever. like it just doesn't matter, I guess. Like it's one of those movies that it's just so much fun along the way, and it's probably just because it's a bunch of friends goofing around and trying to make a movie together. And man, I don't even think I have to guess at this. I think it's very easy for me to say there's no movie I have quoted more in the history of my life than Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Princess Bride.
Even Princess Bride, because with Monty Python was just everybody in junior high and high school was just like, we would have entire quote unquote sleepovers to watch this movie 5 times in a row. You know what I mean? Like it was just, so it was, I mean, you're probably right. Princess Bride would definitely be in my top 5, but yeah, this movie easily is the most quoted for me. So yeah, Monty Python and the Holy Grail is just, it's always going to be one of those for me.
I concur.
Well, there you go. We don't even need to spend time on it. CT, what's at your number 3?
All right. I cheated with this because I kind of did what you did with the Harry Potters. I put the Indiana Jones franchise.
That's not a cheat. Yeah, for sure.
But if I had to pick one, I would go with The Last Crusade. Just because, the idea, and especially now that we just lost Sean Connery, there was so much fun in that interplay between the two of them that, it was weirdly sentimental at times, but yet all in the service of just having a great time with these stories. And again, it's what I'm kind of sensing and seeing in all of the films that we're coming up with so far. We've talked an awful lot about the idea of, again, the notion of the films. One of the other things that kind of plays out of this is these films feel like very serialized and are taking advantage of that earlier time of storytelling with action and cliffhangers and heroes and either their journeys or, the people that they were in opposition with. So again, this idea, Indiana Jones is that kind of iconic kind of character and figure that you'd want to have. So he's easily slotted in. And like I said, I would go specifically with The Last Crusade. If I had to choose just one, that would be the one I would choose.
We'll talk about it more later. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I actually have that a little higher on my list. So we will chat about it even more in a little bit.
Including right now because it's my number 2.
Oh, did you pick Last Crusade as well?
Yeah.
Nice. Wow. Well, we'll have to wait
I think
one more round.
I think the only other one, obviously, number 1 is Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls. But I think we can go. I think we can go ahead and talk about Last Crusade right now. No, TT, you're absolutely right. If I had to choose my favorite out of all the Indiana Jones, it's easily Last Crusade. A lot of people would say Raiders, but for me, I think Last Crusade was the perfect way to not only tell a great movie, but to also, unfortunately, they tried to say farewell to a great franchise. And it also ended up being the best pickup line on Tinder. Whenever I match with somebody, I send them the gif of "You have chosen wisely," and I always get a good laugh out of it from the other person. So, yeah,
good to know. Good to know, Andrew. Very good to know. Okay, my number 2 is Beauty and the Beast, the original, the OG, of course. Man, I love this movie. That Disney run of animated films that this is in is just some of the best filmmaking that's ever come from a company over a course of time. Pixar has another great run like that too. But yeah, this movie it hits my sweet spot. Came out right when I was in high school, and great date movie. Kind of.
This movie didn't come out in the 30s.
Hey.
We got a jokester
here. We got a kidda. So I really dig this one. Andrew, you already mentioned yours was in The Last Crusade. So TT, what is your number 2?
Yep, number 2 for me, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Well, I know whose number 1 that is. That is certainly Andrew's number 1. It's one of his favorite movies ever.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm a huge fan. And again, you already mentioned Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. So again, this was another Western that was great to include in there. And again, I would actually argue of the Sergio Leone films, this is probably my favorite out of those. So this, again, great pairing of performers. Love again, there's just something really iconic and dry and just exciting about the idea of everyone in this film. Every element comes together at just the right way that it should. That again, it feels like that quintessential kind of Western. So yeah, it's an easy number 2 for me. And again, I've had a couple of opportunities to kind of move away from the cheese. I'm just going to let everybody know that the cheese is coming back with my number 1, so don't worry.
Yeah, there you go.
So would you say for a second you had to cut the cheese? I think for a second there you just had to.
Dad joke.
No.
Glad I could set you up for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, time for our number 1s, 2 of which have already been mentioned. My number 1 is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I find it very interesting that all 3 of us chose The Last Crusade as our Indiana Jones movie, because most people, I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people would say Raiders would be their favorite Indy movie. But as Andrew already mentioned, there's just something about Last Crusade. I think it's just a more fun, complete movie for me, and it may happen to do with the order I saw them in. I actually saw Last Crusade as my first Indiana Jones movie.
That's weird.
Yeah, it is very weird. And I didn't see Raiders till later. So I was only at that time watching movies on TV. We didn't go to the movies. And so for whatever reason, Last Crusade was playing on TV and we recorded it. And, I was able to watch that one first. So my movie upbringing had a lot of commercials in it, unlike a lot of people. So that's just an interesting look at my life.
You know what? I'm right there with you. You had to watch movies on the telly, and you had to watch them with the edited timeline for movies so they would fit in that perfect slot. So,
oh man, I got to tell you, when we've come into the technological idea of, first of all, widescreen televisions and all that kind of stuff, movies were fresh for me. Watching Star Wars for the first time, like as a complete movie in its actual aspect ratio, was kind of mind blowing for me. Like, it's just, it was an interesting experience, having that kind of stuff happen. But yeah, Last Crusade is just so great. And I love it a lot. And Andrew, your number 1 has been mentioned as well.
Yep. Everybody knows, I think The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is the greatest movie of all time. So, it's no surprise that it's my number 1. I mean, it's impossible, right? It's impossible for a movie to be higher. So, but yeah, TT nailed it. This movie is it is the greatest Western, obviously, but at the same time, it's a great Civil War story, because this all takes place and you see the ramifications and the horrors of the Civil War taking place around these 3 guys trying to get this treasure. And the performances all around are great. Everybody plays their part perfectly. Even though he's the title character, I think Clint Eastwood is the second most interesting person in this movie. I think Tuco is really the character that I love the most, because I think he has the most range to him. Don't get me wrong, Blondie is this, the epitome of a BA Western hero. He's got the quick draw, he's got the steely eyes. But Tuco is human, I guess you could say, where everybody else in this movie is superhuman. But yeah, it's, like I said, it's the greatest movie ever made. So yeah, number 1.
I just realized my favorite movie of all time is also in this category. Singing and the Rain. Isn't that the title of the movie? Singing and the Rain, I think is how that movie goes.
Yeah.
TT, what is your number 1 and the movie? Bring back the cheese, my friend.
All right, I'm bringing back the cheese, with The Sword and the Sorcerer. Which is hilarious.
It's a good movie.
It is a good movie, but let me just say that again, this is one of those that has completely weird personal kind of connections for me. I was literally about a month ago just talking with one of my best friends. We grew up together. We've known each other since we were maybe 10 years old. And we were talking about, because we're both, movie geeks. And as a matter of fact, it was probably in my time growing up, spending time at this guy's house, because he was out of my crew. He was the first guy in my crew who had HBO. He had the first VCR. So, whenever we got together, we went to Dave's house and we watched movies and we hung out. And again, those late night slumber parties where we watch stuff like endlessly. Yep. That was part of our experience. But again, we saw The Sword and the Sorcerer together in theaters in the early 80s when it first came out.
Nice.
And he brought that up because I was like, yeah, I'm trying to remember, like, we've seen all this stuff together. You know, it was like, was it E.T. the first film that we saw? And he's like, no, it was The Sword and the Sorcerer, because we were both into Dungeons and Dragons at that phase. And again, kind of bringing our whole crew of friends into it. And just the idea of the blade, the sword with three blades.
Three blades.
And you can shoot blades out. My God,
Yeah.
we spent so much time coming up, with ways to try to do that in D&D to make it work. And
yeah,
we probably saw that film not because we cared about the story or anything else, but we probably saw that film like multiple times in the theater just because we were like, wow, look at that sword, man. That's just the coolest thing ever. That was, again, it became this iconic thing in our world. So that's one of the things. And again, like I said, it's fascinating me because that was a memory that, again, I got to share with other people. And, that whole group of friends, we were living in that world. And you guys were talking about what it was like, having commercials in your films and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm totally in there, and you probably live that even more. So but this was, like I said, this was one of those that, again, when we were talking about the first films we saw together, this was one of the first films we saw together, and it was pure cheese, pure fun. And I love the idea too, because as I was getting ready for this, I looked it up on YouTube, and you can find the actual Siskel and Ebert review of this film when it came out, and they both actually liked it.
Nice.
Yeah, they were both big fans of this. So I was like, okay, my crew, we were in the right frame of mind because we were there with Siskel and Ebert. So I was feeling good about that.
TT, you and I need to hang out. The more we talk, I realize, you're a good guy. We just need to hang out. We'll sit down. We'll watch Kroll or Enemy Mine or
yes,
any of those movies. Just like especially we're talking about Sword and Sorcerer, how they had that awesome three-bladed sword. I remember Kroll had that incredibly dangerous, I would never want to touch blade. Like, if I touch the thing, it's going to cut all my fingers off. I don't know how he's holding that thing. But all those movies from back in the early 80s, those epic 80s fantasy movies are just so fun. They're so fun. Like, Dragon Slayer is brilliant,
A kingdom ruled by evil, a princess enslaved by passion, a warrior driven by justice.
You know what?
The sword and the sorcerer.
I gotta say this also. I miss 80s fantasy movie cover art. For the movies.
Yeah.
They had the best cover art for their, because it was always, if you look at like a Conan the Barbarian, you had Schwarzenegger, like just insanely more muscles than he actually had somehow. And he had like that, the wolf cowl over him. And then, the beautiful lady who's just covered in the smallest threading, shred, like hovering around his leg. And he's holding this giant sword. And like, this is like the most alpha male cover for a movie I've ever seen, Mm-hmm. And I miss those just ridiculous cover arts.
I hear you. Let's talk about some honorable mentions, shall we?
I have a bunch, so I'm going to let you guys list off yours, and then I'll just pick up the scraps.
DT, did you have any extras like for honorable mention that you wanted to throw out, ones you thought about?
Honestly, the only honorable mention that came up is one straight away that we didn't include. And again, I feel badly for not thinking about it because I'm a huge fan of the franchise, but I'm a Fast and the Furious guy.
Yeah.
So the idea for me that I didn't think of it, including that, is like, God, what was I thinking?
All right, I'll run through some of mine. Ant-Man and the Wasp, I think, is a really fun movie. Princess and the Frog is a decent Disney animated film.
I really like that one.
Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Wanted to mention that. Enjoy that. Lady and the Tramp, another really great animated film from Disney. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Notice I said Willy Wonka and not Charlie. One of my favorite, speaking of Disney animated films, one of my all-time favorite Disney animated films, The Fox and the Hound.
Gosh, I love that movie.
Oh, yeah.
So good. I also really liked Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. I think is a good movie. Akilah and the Bee is another really good film. If you haven't checked that out. And then another movie, Akilah and the Bee.
I don't know if I know that one.
Spelling bee. as what the B refers to in that case. And then finally, my last honorable mention is a documentary from this year called The Painter and the Thief that is worth looking up if you haven't seen it yet. So The Painter and the Thief. What else did you have, Andrew?
I have 4 more. This is the movie that almost made my top 5, but I forgot about it. I don't know if Jason the Argonauts would have brought up, but it's a movie starring Ryan Gosling called Lars and the Real Girl.
Yeah.
I love this movie. People say Hollywood is out of fresh ideas. I mean,
look no further than Lars
the
Real Girl.
Somebody walked into an exec's office and goes, "Hey, I have an idea. How about we get Ryan Gosling to fall in love with a sex doll, and everybody in the town has to pretend that she's real?" I mean, that's an insane premise, but somehow this movie pulls it off. And Ryan Gosling gives actually a really good performance in this movie, selling this character. I love it. It's actually heartwarming. It's not a movie that it's easy to recommend simply for the fact that you have to mention that it deals with Ryan Gosling falling in love with a sex doll. Like, having to explain that to somebody, I'm like, no, trust me, you're really going to love this movie. It's kind of like a Jojo Rabbit, where you have to like, no, trust me, you're really going to love this movie. It's about a kid whose best friend is Hitler. It's one of those movies you're like, it's hard. Right. It's hard to explain and really convince people that it's really good. James and the Giant Peach, I really like. I think it's a good one. You were talking about cheese earlier. I think this is the cheesiest of the cheese. Harry and the Hendersons, you gotta throw that one in there. Yeah. And honestly, it's a movie that gets bashed a lot, but I think it is brilliant. It has an amazing score. That's The Ghost in the Darkness. I love this movie. Yeah. I've actually been to Chicago, the Field Museum, where they actually have the real lions on display there, and they have an entire exhibit set up around them, and it tells the story of how these 2 lions stopped the production of a railroad in, I think it's Sabo, Africa, where they killed hundreds and hundreds of workers. And it's unprecedented that lions have killed this many people and never got caught until the very end. And they had black manes, and they just seemed demonic and evil, and people thought that they were the spirits of these dead medicine men who had come to stop westward expansion through Africa. And just the tales and the stories that are being told during this movie. Yes, Val Kilmer's Irish accent is terrible. And yeah, I understand there's a lot of razzing on it for that. But if you cut that out, this movie is seriously good. It's really close to have made it into my top movies, top 5 at least. So yeah.
Well, there you go. There's our honorable mentions. All right, guys, let's get into the buried treasure. What is that one thing in any area of pop culture that you want to make sure people know about? Andrew, we're going to let you kick this one off. What you got for your buried treasure this week?
Well, Aaron, you might have what would have been my buried treasure, but my sister got me a present, and she got me this pillow here, which seems nice, yeah. But if you do this, it becomes Danny DeVito. Yeah, and it reminded me that I needed to go back and watch a whole bunch of old Danny DeVito movies that I loved. So my buried treasure for this week is a little-known movie called Throw Mama from the Train.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
This movie is hilarious. It's so good. Anne Ramsey, who is the mama in this movie, she's most famous, I think, for being the evil old lady in The Goonies. But she plays Danny DeVito's mother in this movie. And she's just the epitome of everything you would hate to have in a mother. She has that cackling evil voice, and it's just. But at the same time, her character is so well thought out and hilarious that I was not surprised to find out that she actually got nominated for Best Actress because of this role.
Right? Interesting.
Billy Crystal. I love young Billy Crystal. He's great in this. Danny DeVito actually directed this one too, which I thought was really cool. Yeah, if you haven't seen Throw Mama from the Train, it's a great movie that has subtle. It's very, very rare, I think, to see this in a movie. subtle, ridiculous humor that I don't think I've ever seen. That it's ridiculous humor, but you have to listen for it to realize, wait, that's just kind of ridiculous, isn't it? Didn't I just hear that right? So, but yeah, you have to check this one out. I think it's super fun.
You know, it's interesting. The first time I watched this, I watched it because I was such a huge Hitchcock fan, and I wanted to I wanted to see the comedy version of Strangers on a Train.
Yeah.
And so, but no, I'm with you. I like Billy Crystal, man. He's a little bit underappreciated, right? Like, I feel like he gets a lot of props for his Oscar hosting work, which deservedly so. He's, an incredible host, but he's really funny and affecting. Like, he had a stretch a run there where he was doing, great stuff. And, I'd still love to see him get that kind of late career surge, that a lot of people get where, maybe get a nomination for something, find something really meaty to play with. I'd love to see that from Billy Crystal.
Yeah, so, I'm right there with you.
Man. Yep.
My buried treasure this week is a movie called The Dig. This has been out for a couple weeks now, and I finally got around to checking it out, and it's slipping my brain which streamer this is on, but I know it's on a streamer.
Netflix.
Yeah, this is a Netflix, isn't it? Yeah,
it's Netflix. Yep.
So this is on Netflix, and if you loved Carey Mulligan in Promising Young Woman, look no further than here for somewhere where she is completely different. It is an absolutely different performance here. Also, Ralph Fiennes doing work here. This is a movie for me that is the definition of slow burn, right? Like, this is a movie that if you're gonna get bored, you might just want to miss it. Like, because there's definitely an opportunity here for you not to feel like enough is going on. But I was so captured by these characters and this story, which, by the way, is based on a true story of a dig that this family did in their property during the war. Or as the war was kind of getting underway, I was so captivated by it that it didn't bother me that it was quote unquote slow or that the pacing was down, because I was just really interested in not only the dynamics of what was going on with the dig, but also the dynamics of her story, what she was going through, how that impacted her family and the relationships. There's a secondary story about some further archaeologists that are called in that I found moving and interesting. It just feels to me like a very complete character piece on all the characters in this movie. So, Andrew, I will let you know it is not as slow as First Cow. So
how did you know that was? How did you know I was going to ask you that?
Because I know how much you hate First Cow. I totally, it's not quite that slow. So, First Cow makes this look like Armageddon. But yeah, it is definitely slow paced though. So I wouldn't be surprised if you might have some of those same issues, but it is also very interesting. And I did enjoy it enough to give it a recommend here at Buried Treasure. So, TT, did you see The Dig? You saw The Dig. What did you think?
I actually haven't seen The Dig yet. So, okay. I'm looking forward to it, but it's one of those now, hearing what you just said, like I kind of hold off certain films or shows or whatever for the idea that maybe I'll sit down and watch it with my wife. Yeah. My wife does not handle the slow burn at all.
Then no need to wait.
So I'm like, okay, I can just watch this on my own because she's not going to be interested in it.
Yeah, well, there you go. You can check it out on Netflix. What do you got, TT? What's your buried treasure?
Yeah, you know what? I feel like this is my second time here, and once again, I'm going away from the whole movie and film aspect of things. And I guess you guys bring the music out of me. So
bring it, yeah.
My buried treasure is actually Al Green, but it's Al Green covering other people.
Okay.
Let me explain what that really means, because as a kid growing up, my mom was a huge fan of music. The albums were all over the house, and a big part of growing up was being able to see those album jackets and like looking at like whether it was a sketch of him or those photos of him with the big hair. He was the coolest guy, and he had the most amazing voice. But along the way, every album, he would not only have those originals that he had honed and worked on with that crack studio band that he had, but he would always find 2 or 3 cover songs that he would do that, to be quite honest, in my head, probably from maybe 6 to like 16, I just assumed that these were just his songs. I did not know that they were covers at all. So, I would go with "How Can You Mend a Broken Heart," which was a Bee Gees song.
Yeah.
His version of that is the version that I still, whenever, even with saying the title, I'm hearing his version of the song.
Right. Yeah.
He covered them. He covered Willie Nelson with "Funny How Time Slips Away." And again, I love that song, but it takes me a moment. I really have to like stop and say, okay, wait a minute. I can't think about the Al Green version of this because I know the Willie Nelson version and I love the Willie Nelson version too. Yeah. But it was like he would do that. He would take someone else's song. He would make it an Al Green song. I mean, he did the same thing with Kris Kristofferson for the Good Times. And again, that's part of the charm of what he was able to do in a particular time when, music was already so segregated as it was. You had, the soul charts, you had the pop charts, you had the country charts, but you had an artist like Al Green who was just like, well, wait a minute, I can make my own songs, which I do. But he's like, if I want to go and find something else, he's like, these songs are not necessarily listed, or we shouldn't be thinking about them in terms of genre. It's like, yeah, I can take this song and make it an Al Green song. And he did it time and time again. And I wish there are so many musicians, both past and present, that I look at and I think, wow, I really love what you do. I love your work. But I'd love to see you do this. Because again, what he was kind of doing was like what jazz artists had always done. You would have, the standards and the Great American Songbook, which he would just, he was showing us that, yeah, that didn't have to be just limited to jazz. You could take, a soulful or a rhythm and blues kind of take on any song that you wanted, and you could make it work. So yeah, I would hope that people would dig into him, even if it's just whether it's, whatever music streaming service you have, or it's easy now to get on YouTube and like just fall into the rabbit hole of like performances from Al Green. You can just like click them and look them up. But again, yeah, I'm hoping that inspires people to go back and say, well, yeah, I want to see what my favorite artist would do with someone else's song. And yeah, we need more of that in the world.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll have to search that out. Check that out.
I think TT saying that we bring out the music in him is the greatest compliment I've ever gotten in my life from anybody. But no, I think I understand what you're saying. Like with Al Green doing the songs, like I think he did the Kris Kristofferson. What was that song? I forget, but I think he did a cover of a Kris Kristofferson song. But it makes you feel like somebody else wrote the song for them. Like, yeah, they did their version. The one that always pops into my mind is Trent Reznor wrote "Hurt," and then Johnny Cash did a cover of it. Right. And it makes you feel like, yeah, Trent Reznor was singing a song, but Johnny Cash was telling a story with his version. And it feels like that whenever somebody can take somebody else's work and make it their own. I think that's another level of magic that is just once in a lifetime. You rarely get to see that. And I'm with you, TT. We need to bring that back.
Yeah, we definitely do. I would, like I said, I have a whole list of musicians, and I'm kind of like, yeah, I'd love to see you do this person's song over here or whatever it is. And you could have, again, it's the idea. It takes the mashup to a completely different level, because again, it's really about making sure that you place your own personal stamp on whatever that song is, whatever that genre is. You can say, yeah, I can make this something else. And it's the sort of, in some ways, bringing it back to film. That's kind of what we look at when we're talking about reboots and all of this kind of stuff. Sure. But again, I think the problem is, especially with film, you don't necessarily have to go for a film that people already love and just updating it for a new audience. It's like, yeah, you take something that maybe didn't quite work or didn't quite hit in the way that it should and say, well, wait a minute. Yeah, there was a good idea here. Yeah, I think I can execute it a little better. Yeah. And I think that's what we need more out of the idea of these reboots and everything. Like, yeah, take something that didn't work. Don't give me, don't take a film that did really well back in the day and just say, yeah, we don't think that, newer audiences are going to be interested in this particular version of it. So we'll make a version that looks like them. We had to do that. Yeah, like I said, go with something that didn't work and make that better.
Yeah, it was For the Good Times as a Chris Christopherson version that I was thinking of. Oh, he also did Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, the Otis Redding song. So I never heard his version of that. So I guess that's what I'm doing after we're done.
Yeah, it's really good too. It totally is.
Well, I mean, Taylor Swift is redoing her own songs, so there's that.
Wait, what?
that we've got going for us. So, yeah, she's covering her own songs so that she can like own them completely and have versions that are hers. So yeah.
And it's funny. I'm not a Taylor Swift fan, but I like that in terms of the business behind it and why she's doing it. I'm totally 100% behind her for that. I'm like, she made all this stuff, and she should have the rights and access to it. So good for her.
I agree. Well, we did it, guys. We did a podcast. Congratulations to us. Look at us go. We set out on this journey when it started to make sure a podcast happened, and we have successfully accomplished said journey.
Well, you guys did. I did half of the work. I only saw one of the movies.
That's true. You were quite a slacker this week. Thank you so much for joining us today for Sif Pop. It is part of the Studio DNA Podcast Network. You can find out more about other shows on the network at studiodna.media or by searching Studio DNA in your podcast player. Huge thanks to Andrew for hanging out with us again today.
Well, thank you, buddy.
Big thank you to producer Phil for producing the audio and video show.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks to Drew for the graphics and putting together some of the graphics for the show.
Golf clap.
And a big thank you again to TT hanging out with us again. TT, tell people where they can find you online. Where would you want to send people to see more stuff from you?
Yeah, the easiest place is terrencetodd.com. That's where I archive everything from writings to the reviews I do 5 days a week on Fox 19. Plus, I now have a new project that I'm working on. Got an arts grant here in the city. So I'm going to be looking at truth and reconciliation, looking at the idea of representation in film and how I approach that as a critic. So we'll be doing long form essays for that and also coming up with a podcast. So I'm going to be taking what I have learned from being here with you guys and developing a podcast myself where I'm talking to people about representation and what it means to them and the films that kind of gave them a chance to see themselves on screen.
Nice. Very, very cool. Also, much love and gratitude to our Sif Pop members for giving monthly to make Sif Pop a real thing. Support starts at $3 a month, and you get access to all the bonus episodes with that. You can find out more at patreon.com/SiftPop. Lots of ways to connect with us. Feel free to comment, rate, or leave a review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. You can also email us, feedback@siftpop.com. And finally, if you're having a good time, your movie-loving friends will probably like the show too. So make sure you let them know about it and that listening is much easier than trying to find a bad Daniel Kaluuya performance. We will be back next week with Nomadland as well as another review. And we will see you then. All right. Live video hanger-outers, thank you for chilling with us today. Appreciate it. A lot of great stuff going on in the chat. And we appreciate you taking some time to hang out with us. Stuart says, come back again, TT. You rock. So we agree.
Yeah.
TT is awesome.
Yeah.
That he.
All the love for TT. Deservedly so.
You've got some built-in. Hey, it's okay, man. Okay, it's all right, man.
I just need a moment. That's all. Just give me a moment.
I wasn't expecting it.
Nothing but love for you on Sif Pop.
Yeah, you've got some built-in podcast listeners probably ready for that podcast.
Have you like thought of a name for your upcoming podcast yet?
You know, I'm still kind of just working this all through. I got this project grant and pretty much literally as soon as I got the grant and I started working on it, everything changed because of January 6th. It was just like, okay, I'm sitting around watching all this stuff go on. It's like, okay, that's going to change everything that I'm going to do.
Sure.
So fortunately, the organization that gives out the grants, they are kind of like, you know what, we appreciate what you're saying about that. Take your time, figure it all out. So got one long form essay up. I'm actually about to post the second out of, there are going to be 5 essays that are part of this. I'm going to post the second one next week. And then in March, kick the podcast off. And yeah, it's just a chance for me to sit down and talk to people, just like I said, about representational kinds of issues. And I'm hoping that we're going to be close enough to maybe be able to do some of this in person, because that was a big part of it for me. Like,
Sure.
I live in our downtown portion of the city, and thanks to the TV stuff, people kind of recognize me for that now. So I feel like, I kind of wanted to go out and really meet people in the city, whether it's at a bar or a coffee shop or a restaurant or whatever, and just be able to kind of set everything up and just be like, okay, let's just have a conversation.
That's cool.
So I'm hoping we'll get to that. But if not, until then, I'll be using Zoom or whatever to kind of connect with people. But I'm just learning, just kind of figuring it all out.
Man, I used to drive through Cincinnati a lot on I-75. I used to live not just up the road. It's up the road a couple hours, I think, in a little town called Tip City, Ohio. It's right off of I-75, just up north of Dayton a little bit.
Okay, I was wondering.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I mean, it's been since I was a kid that we lived there. So, but yeah, Cincinnati's a beautiful town coming across the river, and
good spaghetti chili.
That's when you got to get the skyline. Got to get that skyline.
Yeah. That's I've been here 20 years, and I'm still not ready to commit to Gold Star or Skyline or I can't do it yet.
Yeah,
that's the thing. For us, I think Springfield is really known for cashew chicken. It's gross. I can't do it. It's one of those things where people are like, oh, if you go into Springfield, you got to try cashew chicken. It's where it was invented. And I'm like, but it's gross. Just get general chicken or anything else on the menu that's not gross, And I find that in a lot of places where you go, like, if a town or a city is famous for a certain type of food, they become, I guess, lax on it. And like, that's not the place to get that food. Is like, if you were to go to, I'm trying to think of like a Chicago deep dish, some of the best Chicago deep dish is not in Chicago. You got to go somewhere else because
I disagree wholeheartedly, but that's fine.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I was with you for a moment there, but then I'm like, I came here from Philly, so like the whole Philly cheesesteak thing, you cannot get a better cheesesteak than a couple of spots in Philly. You just can't do it.
Okay, yeah, that's true on the Philly cheesesteak, because I forget the name of the place, but I went to Philly in 2006, and the place I went is the same place where he got his Philly cheesesteaks in Rocky, and I've never had a better Philly cheesesteak than that. I forget the name of the place though. But
there are a couple of spots, but like I said, you can certain things. And again, I don't know about the Chicago deep dish bit.
I think you're going to the wrong Chicago deep dish restaurant if you don't think the best Chicago deep dish isn't in Chicago. But yeah, you're probably going to one of the big chains, right? Like Giordano's or something like that.
Yeah, Giordano's, Lou Malnati's. Yeah. There's some places. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying those places are bad. They're great, but I think I've had better outside of Chicago. So
my brother says heresy coming from Andrew. Time to cancel the show.
No, it's not one of those things where you cancel the show. It's one of those things where I got to put out a Twitter apology. I have to make I guess I would have to make a Twitter account. Put out the apology. You would have to share it, and then I could go back to deleting my Twitter account. Jay
Bourgeois says, too bad you guys already did the pre-show. I would have listened to 20 minutes of this. Well, you're welcome. We're glad to give you a couple extra minutes for hanging out with us. We're glad to do it. Thanks, guys. We will see you next Sunday for more. I think, this is confirmed. Juan's going to be back with us next Sunday.
Cool.
So if you remember Juan from coming on the show, I think early in January. So we'll see you guys next Sunday afternoon.